Hello, this is Bone, and you're listening to the Drizakeo podcast. Sponsored by Buff Out. Get chicks on your dick.
We're gonna talk about some explosive shit.
Hello everyone, I'm Drizakeo, and this is my guest DiDDis. And today we're gonna be discussing the conspiracy theories about Inner Earth and the occult.
Okay.
So, one of the first things is Hollow Earth. I wanted to ask you about the entrances.
Yeah.
Because you know about the entrances better than I do.
Yeah, I know a little bit.
A little bit.
All right, so
You text me paragraphs and paragraphs saying you know a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's hard just to segue from a text message to it. But yeah, we can go ahead. I can just go ahead and list off some of the places, and like if you hear anything interesting, you can just go ahead and stop me, and like we can just talk about it. All right. So the big one that people think that is there, other than the one that's in the North and South Poles, obviously, is Kentucky's Mammoth Cave, and the reason why they think that is because no one's ever been able to touch the back of it, and it's the biggest cave in, I think, the world. Definitely the United States, but I think it's the biggest cave in the world. And you're actually not allowed to go into these places, like into these caves and stuff, without permission from a government with a government-assisted lead or whatever they're called, you know.
How long have you needed government permission to go in those caves?
No, I don't know an exact date, but I know back in the 20s and 30s, like you were allowed to, go exploring caves, but sometime after that, they said that you're not allowed to do this anymore. So you can't just walk into a cave somewhere and go as far back as you can. And I mean, it makes sense to some degree because they're very dangerous. Like you can fall into a hole or something like that, and you have to have proper equipment, just to go down there or whatever. But I feel like people, should be allowed just to go do that. But I do understand why they say you can't. But it does lend credence to the conspiracy theorists who think, oh, they're hiding something. That's why they don't want us to go down in there.
Well, don't you think that the timing is kind of suspicious? Like what's the name of that man that said that he flew to Agartha?
Oh, Admiral, I believe it was Richard Byrd. I know it was Admiral Byrd, but I can't remember his first name sometimes. It escapes me now.
That happened around the 20s and 30s, didn't it?
No, that happened right after World War II, and they gave him an unlimited budget to go down to Antarctica to see if there was a Nazi installation down there, like they said there was.
Yeah.
And then something happened, and they were only down there for a very short period of time. They were given unlimited time and unlimited funds, and for some reason, this guy comes back and he says, "Hey, we can't do this," and it was cut short. And there's actually a really good video on YouTube where he's actually discussing this on TV, and he says the next world, and this was after World War II, he said the next world war that would occur would be with something basically out of our imagination. And a lot of people think that he was talking about either some type of nuclear weapons or obviously what or the Nazis called from the Vril Society. And they basically were worried that it was UFOs or some type of flying object that the Nazis had before we figured it out. So that's just the really short version of it. But that's basically what happened there, and that's why he came back.
His name's Richard Byrd, you said?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
When did he die? Because I heard something about him giving up more information.
Yeah, he actually died
right before he died.
Yeah, he died in 1957.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and the information that you said he was giving up came out in a supposed journal that he waited until after he passed away to have a family member release, and this is actually how all the stories came out as to what happened that day. Anybody who's interested could look it up,
Yeah.
I'm not claiming to be the utmost authority on all this.
Well, like the thing about Richard Byrd is, I mean, he flew to the North Pole entrance supposedly, right?
That's what they said, and then he lost control of the plane, and then the plane was guided into the subterranean cavern where he met the people who live, the Agarthians, I believe is how it is. But the people who live in Agartha, they basically told him, you know, there's going to, if you guys don't stop with the bombings and yada, 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 you know, we're not going to try and help you. We're not going to try and progress the civilization. And if it got to a certain point, then they would even step in to try and, you know, neutralize whatever situation that we caused. But that's actually like the big reason why they keep themselves separated. That, you know, that's a theory. That's the big reason why they keep themselves separated from us up here.
You're speaking of the Nordic race, right?
No. I'm talking about the, I don't know if it's the Agarthians or, I don't know what you would actually call them, but whoever lives in Agartha, and there's a couple different species supposedly that lives down there. So it was.
Well, are you aware of which species or like which race was the one that told them what you just said?
Yeah.
Or no?
Yeah, the Agarthians. They're more humanoid. Now, there are Nordics who supposedly like live in that area, but we're talking about the South Pole, you know, in Antarctica, as opposed to the North Pole, where the Nordics would be.
Okay. I got you. I just got a little confused.
Oh yeah.
What's that name of that cave? Because I remember you also telling me that that reptilians lived in like Agartha.
Yeah, that's a theory. Now, I don't know. The one thing that I would say is I don't necessarily know the specific areas where they would live at, but I do know that in Kentucky's Mammoth Cave, that they supposedly come out of there as well. There's also Mount Shasta in, I believe, California, where there's a lot of supposed interactions with these creatures.
I was actually just about to ask you about that. Like, I couldn't remember the name of it. I knew it was in California, but I couldn't remember the name of it.
Yeah. There's a race that supposedly is like they're supposedly like somewhat elephant-like. You know, they just have really long noses. And there's a pretty good video on YouTube of this guy who's talking about his story or his encounter with one of these things. And I believe the name of the creature was Darrow or something like that, Darrow. And basically they're talking about like their shapes. Some of them are shape shifters. I mean, but that's like a reptilian thing as well. So like, how would you really know?
Yeah, like maybe they're just being misled or something.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, all of it's theory, you know, and none of it's actually been proven. Some of it's very compelling, you know. Obviously, I subscribe to certain theories, but it's sometimes it's hard to distinguish. But that's where it's left up to the person to, you know, using their discernment
to decide.
So, like,
well,
go ahead.
There's this wrestler named Brian Kendrick. He's really into the occult stuff too, and he knows about all this.
Does he talk about it?
Yeah, and like he used to be in WWE, like the big one, which, you know, might not be so good to be talking about that type of stuff, depending on you know what you believe.
Yeah, that's probably why he's not there anymore.
Well, no, he went. So then he went to TNA and like smaller companies, and then like started talking about it more out in public and stuff.
Yeah.
But now he's back at WWE, and I don't think he really talks about any of that kind of stuff anymore. Anyway, I got off topic. He went to that Mount. It's called Mount Shasta. You said?
Yeah, Mount Shasta.
Yeah, he went there and he looked around. He didn't find anything, and he said that he smoked weed with a bunch of hippies. You know, maybe those hippies were the reptilians. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because like they're supposed to be shapeshifters, so you never know. Like, but that's the thing. Like, how for someone like that, how are you only going to spend one day? You know, people have been spending their whole lives trying to figure out where these places are and like how to get in there. But like the thing is, it's like you have to go through the cave systems. That's why it's so hard. Because
yeah,
you know, the hollow Earth thing is not that the Earth is 100% hollow. It's more like large caverns. You know what I mean? It's like a honeycomb.
Yeah.
It's a honeycomb. So it's not. There's just a big ass hole in the planet. It's not like that. It's.
That's the way I was thinking about it.
Yeah, no, it's not like that. Because there's actually old maps from prior to the 1930s that show it like that. But that was the reason why it comes up that way is because that was the best way that their minds or the people's minds at that time could analytically describe this or show it. Because when you walk into a cavern that you can't see the end of, it's like, well, maybe that this whole thing is just hollow, and it's not necessarily true, because I think it was in 2015, I believe, last year or the year before. So anytime from 2014 to 2016, there was some scientific discovery where they actually some scientists from NASA and JPL actually came out and said, hey, there are oceans underneath the crust that are actually like larger than the oceans that we have. So and that's pretty intense to actually think about. There's an ocean under the ocean. So
well, like, just think of like what type of creatures would be a home to.
Exactly. Because I mean, at least on this planet, when you see water, there's going to be life around it. Even on remote little islands, there's crabs, or there's some type of fish that live around the island, or some type of birds that somehow have made their way to the island. It's just, even to the smallest extent, no island on this planet is completely uninhabited. There's either some type of insect, some type of crab, there's something. So that would be cool to go down there and be like, hey, what do we have in these subterranean oceans or these subterranean caverns? Even if there's not like super races of people, it would be cool to discover like what type of reptiles or what type of insects are down there. Maybe there's even large reptiles that maybe would be reminiscent of dinosaurs or something like that. It would be cool to look into, be able to do that. But we as regular citizens aren't allowed to do that without some type of government grant.
Yeah.
And that's the same with Antarctica. We just can't go there. We can't go to the North Pole either. We're not allowed to. We have to have specific government grants. But, there are more entrances than just Mammoth Cave and Mount Shasta. Those are just the most popular ones here in America, outside of, obviously, like I said, in Antarctica. But there's also supposedly one in Tibet. The Tibetan monks, they have the largest cabinet of information about Hollow Earth and about this information you're talking about. They have a lot of occult information too, because they're supposedly in contact with these people, and the Nazis actually went to Tibet to try and get information out of them as well, and they did end up finding some things.
So they got information out of like these Tibetan monks. Was it like specifically like the Dalai Lama?
Now that I can't speak to, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it was the Dalai Lama directly, but again, I'm not entirely sure about that.
I mean, it probably had to be someone like somewhat high up, don't you think? Like if they're knowing like types of. I mean, as this type of information.
Yeah, as much as there is a hierarchy in like these monasteries, they have very much free flowing information. So it's not like when you go to the Vatican and there are these Secret Service agents where they're like, they can only have access to the Vatican library, and you have to get all these passwords and these keys and permissions, yada yada yada, to get the information. When you go there, they're pretty open, so you can go. The ones that talk still, because some of them take vows of silence, but the ones that actually talk, if you can make it there and you can actually talk to them, then they'll actually tell you the information. You don't have to sit there and pry it out of them and say, I'll give you this or this certain amount of money to speak about it. It's part of their history and part of their culture and part of their belief system. It's like...
Well, they probably wouldn't accept the money anyway, would they? Because
No. It's like you and I talking about the Bible. It's just, that's what it is to them. That's part of what it is.
Yeah.
And there's like places in Mongolia, and India, some people even think that the pyramids of Egypt have an entrance connected somewhere inside of the pyramids that go all the way down, but that's also another theory.
I actually heard something about the pyramids having an entrance in them.
Yeah.
Like, supposedly, I think it was in the 80s or maybe it was the 90s or something like that. Paramount, like, they found this like entrance room that they couldn't get the doors open.
Yeah.
And then Paramount wanted to go in there and film when they finally got these doors open. And then something with the Egyptian government charging it too much, they didn't. So then the Paramount just decided to leave. But when they opened it, it was like the room was just full, like it was just like full of light. And like this is just what I heard.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't remember hearing what.
And that happened.
They specifically found in there.
Did that happen in the 90s? You said.
I think it happened in the 80s or 90s.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure.
I heard one of where they found like this 2-ton, you know, the lid of this sarcophagus was like 2 tons or whatever, and it was supposedly like the tomb of an actual god or whatever. I read that one. That one's pretty interesting. But
oh really?
Yeah, it's like supposedly connected to this whole society that goes down in there. It's like the very entrance of it is pretty cool.
Did they only find a lid? Like did they
no,
not
they
find,
found
like, the rest of
a whole sarcophagus, and then they what they said that they found a body that was in stasis in it, and what that means is that the body isn't 100% dead, you know. But you know that.
So like suspended animation.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, again, it's all just theory, and I can send you the link to that later so you can actually watch it. It's actually connected to this video about this guy who claims he was part of a secret space program where he was on Mars for a few years. The guy's name is Randy Kramer. Now, sometimes I think the guy's a whack job a little bit. But some of the information that he says, you know, sounds, you know, a little bit of it rings to me, so I listened to it. And,
yeah.
And, so I lost my train of thought a little bit, but this guy, you know, he could just be a disinformation, you know, person from the government or whatever, where they'll go and they'll give these people little bits of true information and then say, hey, make up a bunch of shit afterwards, pretty much. So like,
yeah.
So some of it, sounds pretty accurate, but then others, I'm just like, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
Well, going back to the entrances for a second of like how to get into like Agartha or Hollow Earth or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I saw anything or anything like this, but do you know what the Indian trails are? It's somewhat by you.
Yeah, the Indian caves here in Ohio. Yeah.
Like I was gonna jump in because like it's basically just a big fucking hole in the ground and then you can go in the cave from there.
Yeah.
But there's like a fence around it, and then you can go down like these steps, and then you could jump over the thing, which I was gonna do, but Mom didn't want me to do it.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, if you jump down there, you could just end up dying, or you could break so many bones that you're just laying down there.
Well, I mean, it wasn't that far down. You know what I mean? Like it. I think it was probably like 20 feet, but
okay.
I could you go down these steps, and then it's like only like 10 feet. So, I mean, it's really not that big of a fall. I mean, like, if I break my ankles, like, yeah, I'm fucked. Plus, I'd shit myself because I'm, like, looking into the mouth of a black cave.
Like, utterly dark, and you're like, what the hell am I gonna do down here? That's like a big thing, though. So, like, if you ever want to go spelunking, which is, like, the cave exploring is what it's called, like, you need to, first of all, you need to figure out how you need to really do it, and then have all the right equipment.
Yeah.
But then you need to make sure that you have some type of and, you know, have some type of fun behind you.
Yeah.
But these entrances, like, I've never heard of one in and the Indian caves here, but that would be something that would be cool to explore. They actually, in Newark, Ohio, they said that they found some Egyptian artifacts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they were doing some I'll send you this information. They were doing some digging, and I'm not entirely sure where it was. I'll have to double check. I'll have to double check. But they said that they found some Egyptian artifacts, and then they have it posted up in this museum up here in Newark, Ohio, which is right along with what is it, Indian Mound that's up here that looks like a snake.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And
I've heard lots of stories of like different things from different cultures being found like in America or like around the shore, like around the shorelines. Like people have said there's been like Vikings have been here.
oh yeah, the Vikings were definitely here before Columbus. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Leif Erikson. But have you? There was something. Oh, the Grand Canyon. Have you heard about the Egyptian artifacts that were found in the Grand Canyon in the 20s?
No.
Oh, well, there's this location in the Grand Canyon. Now, again, you're not allowed to go here unless you have a government grant and you've been approved. You're not allowed to go there. But there was somebody who came down there, and he was looking from the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian sent him down there, and apparently they found all these artifacts, and they found giant mummies that had like red beards and red hair. And a couple of weeks later, there was some type of expedition from the Smithsonian to follow up with this, and then they never came back, and none of these artifacts have been found since. And it was in newspapers too, so like it's been documented that this actually happened, but now people would just think that it's some type of story that, this newspaper was trying to get people to, come to the Grand Canyon to look around. But, it's funny because all these locations always have, oh, you're not allowed to go there. The government says this is all red taped off. You can't go there without permission, blah, blah, blah. And you have to be somebody of notoriety. You can't just be Joe Schmo who walks up from the street corner and say, hey, I want to run this expedition. Like, you have to have a name for yourself. And then they make you sign some type of contract where you can't disclose the information that you found for a number of years, blah, blah, blah. It's always around a bunch of red tape. That's why these theories just come up so often, because people are just so intrigued by, well, what could have been there that we're not allowed to see it, It's pretty cool.
Well, I feel like when I talk about stuff to do with the occult, I talk more about like shit that's going on with like with fallen angels and stuff.
Yeah.
Just because just from what I've seen, that's what I think a lot of stuff has to do with, and that's, you said that like they found these red-headed giants, right?
Yeah.
Like mummies. Yeah. I mean, like, do you think that those could be like mummified like Nephilim?
They could definitely be. The Bible talks about the Nephilim. That's all giants, and there was a race of giants before God had the great flood come in and take all that stuff out, and it could very well be. A lot of people think that the Nephilim could have been from either other planets or outside of the galaxy. There's just so many theories about it, but that's one thing that's intriguing about it, is because the Bible does talk about these things, and it's like for people who are Catholics and Christians like us, it's like, well, we do believe in the Bible, but do we believe in it word for word? And if you do believe in it word for word, that's to say that there were giants here. You believe that devoutly. So it all depends on your belief system and what you are willing to believe. And I'm a firm believer that if you cut yourself off from certain things, you're just never going to see it. Like, you'll never experience it. And that's why I always try and say, it's a possibility. It could happen. Like, it could be possible. I do think that I subscribe to that about the Nephilim. I think that there was a period of time where these giants have been found, because they're found all over the world, of these stories, places that are disconnected by miles and miles of ocean. You know, how did the statues on Easter Island get there? And even the people who live there can't read the writing that's there. So there was a civilization that was there at one point and died completely off. We don't know how they died off. We have no real idea of how it happened. We have no real idea how they made these 30-ton statues that are anywhere from 10 feet to 20 feet tall, 30 feet tall. So it's a cool thing to think about.
I mean, not even to mention that, like, those things have, like, people think that those things have, like, lasted, like, eons.
Yeah.
Like, that they could be, like, as old as the earth itself. Like, it's just, like...
Thousands of years, man. Like, how Stonehenge, places like that, the pyramids, those things, like, people, us today in our modern culture have no idea how they actually happened. Like, all of our construction equipment, that all the advancements that we've had can't even lift some of the blocks that are in the pyramid. You know, it's just crazy to think about. So how did they get there? How did these people who were only supposed to have copper tools and wooden tools, how were they able to make these so precise cuts and, you know, cut into marble and granite and volcanic stone? And it's a really cool thing to think about. You know, you can always go to the outlandish and be like, these people were magicians or it was aliens. You can always go to the outlandish, but there is an actual reasoning to how it happened, and that's why I look into this stuff. It's like it's really intriguing. How did it actually happen? And it's cool to hear all the theories that people have about it. But my personal belief is, I think that, you know, everything else aside, I think we had a great understanding for how sound waves actually work, because in certain labs, in NASA and JPL, they actually do stuff like this. And JPL is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory that NASA works very closely with. They work with sound levitation. So what they will do is they will take a high-pitched frequency and they can levitate metal balls with it, or they can levitate stone with it. And it's really cool. Now, they haven't been able to get it to the point where they're lifting a 30-ton block of stone, but the idea of their starting to find this information, either once again or brand new, it's all really interesting. Like, you can levitate things with sound. There's studies about, like, you can alter conscious states of mind with sound. Like, it's really cool. That's another reason why music is so important to people, and why it's such a huge phenomenon. Sound does a lot, you know, and it's pretty cool to see exactly what it can do. That's what I personally think. I just, you know, I don't really have any proof behind it, but that's just what rings true to me.
Yeah. Well, like, I just think in general that, like, most people, when you talk about things like this, or, like, things to do with the occult, or just things that aren't just, like, totally, like, normal for what people think is normal, I think a lot of people are, like, blind, I guess, to it. I mean, I'm not trying to say that, like we're smarter than them or anything. I'm just saying that, like they just need to, like they just need to, like, open their eyes more, like, open their eyes to different things, like, different ideas.
Definitely, I agree with you. But what you're asking out of people is to change their reality, change their belief systems.
Well, not even, like, it's just, like, just to like look, like, just to look more, just to read more into things, not to just you know,
but
see this thing and then just toss it to the side, like no, there's no way. You know?
But those people will come back and be like, you want me to read more into it, but I think you're reading too much into it. You know, it's a double-edged sword with that argument. Like, and you know, you could be right on that. You know, I can only speak on my opinion about it, but I really do think, like, when you ask somebody to sit there and say, hey, look at this evidence, it could be this, why couldn't it be this, blah blah blah, you are really asking them to, like, change their belief system, because you're asking them to believe in something they do not believe in already off bat. You know, I do not believe in this, and you're saying, hey, actually this is true, so you should look at it this way.
No, I mean, that's not what I'm saying.
No.
I'm saying, like,
yeah, I understand. I'm just saying, in general.
yeah,
like
gotcha.
that's how
Yeah,
people
gotcha.
view this. It's like, I don't believe in any of this, but you're asking them to. So it's always, you can't argue with a fool. It's a roundabout argument, because you could give them all the proof in the world, but the thing is you don't have the proof. Like, we don't have the fundamental and hard evidence. Like, we're talking about theories and ideas that have been around for literally centuries. So I think there's a truth to it because it's been around that long, but I also think there's a lot of wrong information in it, and that's why people who talk about this stuff sound crazy, because or they're just fanaticals. They live in a fantasy world. It's because we don't have hard proof. We go off on a lot of belief, but sometimes it does pay off, because there are things like people didn't believe that there would be other scrolls out in the desert to talk about Jesus and go on about his life, and then come to find out 2,000 years, 1,000 years, 500 years after the fact, they find these things called the Dead Sea Scrolls that were just in a fucking cave somewhere in these pots. And then they talk more about Jesus Christ, and they talk more about how things are and what's to come, and how things were done in the past. And we find stuff every day that talks about things that happened in the past that at a certain point we just didn't believe in. We didn't even know mountain gorillas existed in Africa. We had no fucking idea.
What existed?
Until like 1902,
Oh,
we
really?
didn't even know that mountain gorillas existed. It was crazy. We always thought it was just some story that, the African people who were living in the jungles would tell us. And it actually turns out, when you go high enough, there's fucking gorillas up there.
Well, that's kind of like the same thing with like pandas in China.
Yeah, and now people are like, oh, of course, that's a gorilla, of course, blah, blah, blah. You can't compare the two. Like, on the contrary, though, you can, because think about for how many thousands or hundreds of years we had no idea gorillas existed up there. And then for the first time, a white person went up there and they were like, hey, guys, there's fucking gorillas up here. And then we believed it. So there's a lot of give and take, because then people will be like, oh, Bigfoot's real, and if they take the gorilla thing. Well, that's, as much as I do believe in that, it's not necessarily true, It's not necessarily true.
Well, one of the stories, I'm pretty sure this is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, is it talked a lot about like Jesus' life as a child.
Yeah, and how he like pushed somebody off a roof.
Yeah. Oh, wait, you know about that?
Yeah, man. Of course. Like
that was the exact thing I was about to talk about.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a funny story, and he brought this kid back to life after he killed him. It's like, what?
Well, because everyone. No. Like the kid like fell off the roof or whatever.
Yeah.
And then no one believed Jesus, because they're all like, you pushed him off the roof, and then Jesus brought him back to life, and the kid was like, no, that didn't happen.
No, he didn't do it. And that's great. How many of us wish that we could do something like that? But it's just funny, like how many things that we think, weren't part of the story or weren't actually there, that actually was. And that's why this stuff is really interesting to people like you and I, is because it's intriguing the imagination.
Like one of the things that kind of goes with like the Dead Sea Scrolls is like a lot of people that I've talked to, mostly older people, and then younger people don't really know that much about it.
Yeah.
Is like older people won't believe something like the Dead Sea Scrolls. Like older people that I've talked to have said that, like
it's not canon. It's not part of the Bible.
Yeah, because and like same fucking thing with the Book of Enoch.
Yeah,
right.
Which it was a part of the Bible at one point, and it was taken out.
Do you know why the church took it out?
Probably because it talks about fallen angels and the Nephilim, and it talks about all this crazy stuff that's supposedly happening. The reason why it happens is because it doesn't follow suit with whoever the leader is at the time wanted it to go with. Like,
yeah.
There's been plenty of kings of England. Like, that's why we have so many different versions. We have the New American Bible. We have the King James version. We have whatever, whatever version. We have different versions, and some modern Bibles don't even have Revelations in them. And Revelations is a very important part of the Bible, in my opinion, if not one of the most important parts.
It like, okay, in my opinion, this might sound fucking nuts, okay, but so you know how there is all these fucking modern Bibles, and they all have they all like they change the words of what Jesus said and things like that.
Yeah, they changed a lot of things.
Well, like in my opinion, I think that's the devil doing that. You know what I mean? Like they have a Bible. They have a Bible for people that are gay.
Yeah.
Like I have nothing against gay.
No, but I know what you're saying. It's the bastardization of the word.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. It was not at all a knock on gay people. I know what you mean. But I agree with you. I think that it is a bastardization of the word, and all it does is it's trying to cater to the norm, what's there. But you also, one of the big things is when you do things like that, you take out the integrity of what was there. You take out the real meaning. That's why some of the Bibles today aren't as powerful and they're not as captivating as the older ones, but it's just some of those things, they don't hit home the way that they used to. It's because they don't have all the same things in them. It's like when go ahead.
Well, what is your opinion of the current Pope?
I like him. I think he's done a really good job, man. Like, he's brought a lot of young people back into the church. He's always very well spoken. He's very caring, especially with the children, and his biggest thing is to bring young people back into the church. And he's also opened up, and just to bring it back to what we were talking about, he's opened up and he said if aliens were to come here, he would even baptize them. I think he's the Pope that we've needed for a long time, and I can't wait to see what else he does, because he's supposed to be there until he dies. So I think he's going to be. I even think he's going to be better than John Paul II, who was also a very good Pope as well. But I like the youthfulness of the Pope that we have now.
Okay. My opinion is about to differ from you a lot.
That's all right. Go ahead. I like to hear new stuff.
Okay, so I think I don't. As much as it's admirable for him to bring the young people back into the church,
yeah,
and to start appealing to everyone, trying to kind of be PC about everything. I mean, because he is sort of a liberal Pope. Pope Francis said that all religions point to the same God.
Yeah.
And I used to think in high school that's what I used to think, but
I still do.
Aside from religions of Abraham, I don't think Hinduism points to our God. You know what I mean? You may, but I just I just feel like they worship so many gods, and we're only supposed to we as Christians are only supposed to worship one God.
Right.
And I just feel like that's so off base, and a lot of the things that Hindus worship are just so off base from what we believe.
Yeah. See now.
Same thing with Buddhism. I mean, nothing against Muslims or Jews either, but it's just specifically Hinduism, Confucius. What's the name of their religion?
There's Sikhs, and then there's there's Taoists, and there's a couple. I honestly can't remember. I don't know too much about the religion to speak too much onto it. But you know what? There's been plenty of civilizations who have had multiple gods, but the one thing that they have all in common is that
what?
they all point to one major creator. Their God, Allah, Zeus, Jupiter, they all point that there was one major figure, and the rest of them, at least that's my interpretation of it. the rest of them are like the explanation for the force of the body behind, the wind, or like the lightning in the sky. Why do we have wars and shit like that? That was their basic way to explain why these things were going on. Now, I do understand what you're saying about why you disagree with that, but I agree with the statement on that half, that I do think that all religions point to the same direction. Obviously, they all have a different way of explaining it, though.
Well, let's just focus on Buddhism just for a second.
All right.
Like, they don't believe in a god. They just believe that we're all like judged, kinda, right?
Yeah.
And then we're all like, we keep getting reincarnated until we finally hit nirvana.
Right. Now,
Which is like heaven.
now I think
Is there a Buddhist hell?
not hell how you would normally think about it, but it has so much to do with the reincarnation path that you're on. So like if you hit nirvana, there's which would be our heaven. There is a bad location, but it's not hell as we think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, see, I get why you have your division about it, but I think the thing with Buddhism, it speaks more directly onto I think it speaks more directly about this life and what we do to get to nirvana. You know what I mean? As much as there is an explanation to what nirvana or heaven is, it's Buddhism to me. This is just my interpretation of it. It's just a representation of, like I said, how we live life, what we do, and the one, or if there's multiple that come after it, how we get to heaven, sort of. You know what I mean? And the other religions are talking more about specifically God. They talk specifically more about God. It's the importance is more on your relationship between you and God, when Buddhism and Hinduism have more of a relationship to how you live life and interact with the other life that's around us.
I don't think, like, out of everyone that I said, like, out of all the religions I said, I think Buddhists are probably, like, the least violent, like, the most peaceful. Yeah.
Honestly, there could be, but I've never heard of a Buddhist terrorist, There could be. I don't know. I've just never heard of it.
Well, like, I mean, some Buddhist extremists amongst, like, they burn themselves in protest against the Chinese being in Tibet.
Yes.
That's so ridiculous to me. Like, it's just like.
But is it though? Is it any more ridiculous
Well, no,
than Joan of Arc going to battle for God?
No. Like, I didn't mean it that way. I mean, like, it's ridiculous in the sense that. Like Christian terrorists or Muslim terrorists will go and sacrifice their lives and like kill a bunch of other people, but a Buddhist like terrorist is someone that burns themselves in protest.
Yeah,
like that's just that's so crazy. Like,
yeah,
it's just.
I
mean, like it's a peaceful way
Definitely.
to. Yeah, it's just like. Yeah.
It's more like, to me, it's just, I'd rather hurt myself than hurt something else, They value life so much. That's part of their religion. I mean, that's part of the belief system,
Well, I mean, like, I feel like the Buddhists have been, like, so mistreated, like, by the Chinese government.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Yeah, but, like, all races and religions have, if you look far back enough in history, you can see that there's been struggle and there's been hardships on particular races or particular groups of people at certain times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's so, I don't, it's just, I feel like at the time that it was going on, and I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure there's still some type of arguments going on about it. But when the Chinese did take Tibet and it was all that stuff, like they burnt down and destroyed so many religious relics, like so many books and so much books and information, and that's also things like that happen. Like look at Alexandria when they burned the Library of Alexandria. How many things that we lost, man? Because in the Library of Alexandria, they are supposed to have articles on how the pyramids were actually made. They had articles on space, things that they believed, more stories, more just things of African history and culture that they do not have anymore. A lot of the information was burned about African culture pre-rape and pillage. They had all that information supposedly in the Library of Alexandria, and along with so much of African culture, because Egypt is in Africa, and with all that information just destroyed. Just imagine. There's always a fight from intelligence to ignorance, and ignorance wins a lot here on this planet.
Wasn't Timbuktu kind of reminiscent to Alexandria? Like, wasn't it a place of?
There's been so many places that were supposed to be the next this or the next that. I don't think anything. We've never seen the likes of anything like Alexandria. Like the closest.
Well, I mean, you can actually go to Timbuktu though. Like they know where it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But what I mean is the volumes and the amounts and depth of information that they had there, like because all the information's gone. So how would there be something to equal that? There just, in my mind, there can't be.
Yeah.
It's been destroyed. It can't happen again. But there's always been a reach to try and bring that up. They do that with societies, supposedly Atlantis. They tried to do that back with, they tried to recreate that with the Greek and then the Romans. And
I mean, if you really think about it, like, I mean, this might sound silly, but like the internet is kind of like the new Alexandria,
Yeah.
because there's so much information out there. I mean, a lot of it is not necessarily credible all the time, but you have all this like information, and so many people just don't even care. They don't like look into things. They just sit. You know what I mean? And it's kind of a shame, because I feel like we could live in such a enlightened era if only everyone cared.
Yeah, but they keep us.
There's so much information.
Definitely.
It's just a shame.
But with that as well, there's so much disinformation. So like sometimes it's hard to differ between the two. But the reason why we can't have such a good society is because the people who do control, the presidents, the foreign leaders, the queen, like what have you, like the people who control what actually goes on are not allowing. You can sound as conspiracy theorist as you want about it, but the truth is like, until all information is free, all information is able to be possessed, we still have books that are banned. We still have information that we're not allowed to look up on the internet. Like there's something called the deep web, where there's all sorts of things going on, where prostitution happens, blah, blah, blah. It's like the black market online, but like all these things are blocked from us. And, some of the things are good. Like not everybody should be able to fucking buy a gun online. Not everybody should be able to get a grenade. But what I'm saying is, until all information is 100% free and able to be reached by every person, and I don't mean like a library, that's just full with that just has stories of information. I mean everything that's out there as far as like government papers, things that the governments don't tell us. Until all information is free and accessible, we will never be able to have a society like that, because we could have free energy. Like we had free electricity and Wi-Fi before it was even called Wi-Fi with Nikola Tesla. And even before that, some people think the Egyptians did. But until that stuff is free, until we have leaders like that, we won't live in a utopian society.
Well, they don't want to switch to like green energy because they can't charge you for
it's control.
They can't charge you for having.
It's control.
Yeah.
Like the reason why they don't want you to have it is because they want you to keep you at a certain knowledge level or a certain financial level. It's about control, and if they don't have control, then like there's nothing that they can do about it. They won't be in control, and that's what they don't want. They want to be in control because they want people to have a class system. They want people to have a way they look at you. Like everything's classism. It's layers, you know. It's layers in the form of ignorance. It's just like until those things, like I said, man, until those things are taken away, until we actually put leaders in power who care, it's just we can't have a utopian society as much as we could be. It's just not happening, and it's not going to happen in the next 10 years or even 50 years because the stuff that's going on right now will take way longer for that to be undone. So like we can hope, but it's getting pretty bad.
I mean, like I also think another issue is like just aside from not being able, aside from like the government holding us back.
It's not just the government.
I think that, well, I know, but like people, like you're talking about like a utopian society, like so many people don't get along with each other. Like China, probably like China doesn't like America.
Yeah. But those differences,
North Korea.
those differences now have become more corporate than they have been culturally. If you know what I'm saying.
What do you know?
Everything is such a business now that the reason why China and Russia doesn't like us because we don't export or import certain goods. We've cut off a certain dollar amount. Our values of things may be less somewhere, and those differences are all fiscal. You know, now they're fiscal. They've become from culture differences to fiscally being different. We don't want to associate with somebody who's going to just start a war just because they feel like it. You know, it's not going to happen. And we feel like China and Russia have too much power over us. We owe China how many trillions of dollars? Trillions of dollars. You know what I mean? It's just it's become more about why is this business not as good as the other one and we don't like you because we view each other differently. It's not about culture anymore. It's just about the dollar. And that's also a huge problem that's going on now because that trickles down. Everything that happens high up trickles down. So because it's about fiscal, because it's about money and fiscal years, it becomes the same for your household. That's why you have people who fight for money every day. And it's a good thing because it gets us things. So trade is good. I'm not saying we should abolish a trade system or a money system, currency. It's just we're so fucked up and the people in power like it, so they're not changing it. So people who want to change it, it's not going to happen. When 1984 came out, the book, people had no idea that it could be like that. Why would they have cameras on the corners? Why would they do this and that? Why would the governments be this way? But you got to think, we let cameras come on the corners. We let people do that type of stuff. Like, we let them do it. You know, if there was another revolution, and I don't mean a bloody one, I mean, it's gonna come from within first. So there has to be a revolution in the way people are, and like even me, like we got to stop being. And to get to the society that you were talking about, a utopian society, even to the person boils down to me and you. Like, we can't be lazy for something like that, and we are lazy. So it's far away. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's far away.
Well, it's because everyone, I mean, even including us, just kind of like, why do we have to be the ones to do it, or like someone else will do it,
But here's the thing: do you want somebody with that power to do it? This is why you have to do it. This is why I have to do it, because it becomes a dictatorship. It becomes a presidency. Do you want this guy to dictate to us how we're gonna be because you don't feel like you want to attribute to that? You don't want to give your 2 cents on it. And that's what it becomes again. That's why it has to be an individual thing. We cannot give power to a person any longer. Singular people cannot be trusted with that type of power, because then you see dictatorships. Then you see communism, democracies. Now, some of these things are good. Republics, some of these things are good, but they always lead to the same thing. They always lead back to the path of somebody is in power. We've given them control. Whether they're a good leader or a bad leader, we can't. The thing is, we always fall back into the same processes. That's why there's division between countries. There's been changes in presidencies, dictators, and kings and queens. It's lines of succession that we think is changing the problem that really does not. It's the same thing.
All right. Well, we've gone a little bit over our time limit tonight, and this has been Drizakeo and DiDDis.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Let's do it again.
I hope we do it again, because I think this was for a first podcast. I think this is really good.
Definitely. But again, man, I appreciate it, and I am sure I'll talk to you soon. All right. See you.
Thank you.
That's all, folks.